My name's Ed Hackman, born Elkhart, Indiana in 1942. I was raised and grew up just about 1 mile from the town square west on Highway 120. It was a small two-bedroom bungalow, and my folks bought it in 1941. And we had basically what was modern at the time, including a coal-fired stove. My dad worked on a railroad, and after coming through the Great Depression, he worked every chance he got. So if he was home, it was a treat. We didn't go out to eat very much. We occasionally would take a short fishing trip up above Cadillac, Michigan, but pretty much we stayed home. 20th century was a crack train from New York Central Railroad. Started in the early 1900s, I believe, and ran until sometime in the 1970s. My dad was a fireman on there. It's like saying your dad's a co-pilot on a 747. That train, I rode on a diesel once and a steam engine once with him. And they did really run 90 miles an hour. The trip from New York City to Chicago in the late 40s was made in 16 hours, and including stops. I happened to get to ride on that one time. So, yeah, that was quite an experience. It's the only job you ever had. Went to work for New York Central as a call boy when he's 16 years old, riding a bicycle. Back then, not as many people had telephones. So the call boy had to go to their house, bang on the door, and tell them what time to go to work. So that was his first job. Our granddad also worked on railroad. He was a road foreman of engines. So he's the guy that hired my dad. Grandpa wouldn't let him work on the West End at that time because of gangsters in Chicago. So he went to Grand Rapids. But he hand-fired those steam engines. Typical trip, he'd shovel anywhere from 20 to 30 tons of coal in a 100-mile strip. Business, there was a lot of business downtown Bristol. I'll give you an example from on Highway 120, right downtown, there's Charles Street that only runs to the south. So I'll give you an example from Charles Street west to Division Street, which is Highway 15 headed north and south. But on the south side of 120, going from east to west, on that stretch of one city block, there was Virgil's grocery store, which was located in the old Urban Station, the Valley Line Railroad Station. Immediately attached to that, going west, was Ike Alverson's barber shop. Right beside Ike Alverson's barber shop, going west, was a soldiers' memorial. Even people in the Revolution were listed there, but most of them was from the Civil War on forward. To the west of that, there was a long, skinny, two-story building on an alley. The bottom of that was a couple various dry goods stores. Upstairs, There was a guy by the name of Tom Harker lived up there. Harker family been all around Bristol forever. A couple feet west of that was an alley that only ran south from 120. The next building was a bank. Brick front, apartment upstairs. Citizen State Bank maybe was the name of it. To the west of the bank, now remember, this is still in the same city block. To the west of that was a short open space. You could walk down beside that building. And then it was a barber shop that Lauren Wayne was the barber. That was attached to a store owned by the Congdon family, Congdon Drug Store, which also had rooms upstairs. I don't believe anybody ever lived up there, but there was various civic clubs would rent that from time to time. On the west side of that building was a stairway, and immediately, almost touching the stairway going west, was a little hamburger stand. I think they called it Ward's Diner, maybe. And immediately west of that was the Sinclair station. At that time, a guy by the name of Kenny Pickle had been running that. And then that bordered on Highway 15 going south. So all those businesses were in that one city block. Today, there's one, a bank. Nothing else exists there. I remember it that way, oh yes, all through the 40s. The interurban station was about out by the bank that's there now, and I think that was probably 1957 or 8, something like that. So yeah, from the time I was born up until the late 50s, for the most part, that's what it looked like. Tax my pony. Trying to remember, my dad decided I needed a pony. All kids need a pony. Where we lived was out in the country. Almost no traffic on Highway 120. I was probably 6 or 7 years old. He rented that pony from a farmer over in Goshen. And the pony, a Shetland pony, is, you know, they're not very tall. And I believe that pony was already 20 years old when we got him. And I rode him into, till I was, well, the pony not very tall, and by the time I got too tall to ride him, then we had to give up the pony, and I graduated to a bicycle. But Tex the pony, yeah. Yeah, a lot of people knew the pony. In that period of time on Highway 15, a half a block south of 120, Mrs. Rigby was this older lady's name, at a concession stand. Sold popcorn and peanuts, and I think you could get ice cream and soda pop. For most part, it was only open in the summertime. But back then, a bottle of pop was 10 cents. And I discovered that the pony liked root beer. So, and other people heard about it, so they'd buy him root beer just to watch him drink it. You give him a bottle, he'd tip it up, and of course most of it ran down his mouth and on the ground. But he done the best, and when he was done, he'd just drop it. I learned to better catch the bottle because right there was a sidewalk. Broke a bottle one day. Mrs. Rigby insisted on 3 cents for the bottle I broke. Oh, I didn't have 3 cents. I had to bring it back a couple days later. But she gave me a broom and a dustpan to clean up the broken glass. Grocery stores. Well, of course, King's General Store, which goes clear back to Probosco and App in the 1840s. That was still going real well. Virgil's grocery store, which, as I mentioned earlier, was in the old interurban station. Virgil sold to Hugh Harker, who ran it until it was sold to a bank in Elkhart. On Highway 15 for a period of time, half a block south on the west side was Mitchell Superette. Before that, a guy by the name of Ernie Saylor had been the town freezer. People didn't have freezers at home back then. He rented this a compartment in the big freezer. You go buy half a cow and you had enough room in your drawer, if you will. Put that half a cow or some whatever you had. And many people used that freezing system. And when Ernie Saylor sold out and Bill Mitchell and Mr. Checkley ran it for a number of years. So that would be 3 stores on the east end of town. Back was Lord's Market. And that was a converted house on the east end of town. When Hugh Harker sold his store to the bank, Hugh moved to the east end and took over that store. The next store that came to town was Harding's Market. That'd be a block south of the fire station or south of 120. I'm not sure when they built. That was a couple houses there in the woods, and that was all tore down. Slats Judy. 40s, 50s, 60s, and maybe before the 40s, Slats Judy was well known around town. He moved into Bristol, I believe, with his folks, and I believe they used to live in Baintertown, which is north edge of New Paris. I remember Slats talking about Baintertown. So the Judy family bought a farm north of Bristol on Highway 15, almost to the state line. And as you head towards the state line beyond the right, I remember Mrs. Judy living there. And Slats himself farmed all that, as far as I know, all his life. But Slats lived in town. He and his wife and daughter lived in town, the main square, north across the river, about a block and a half to the right. You follow the road around to the right. And a small conservative house that fits Slats perfectly. The thing people remember about Slats, somewhere in a farm accident, he lost a hand and had a hook. Every kid in town got acquainted with that hook because slats would pinch their ear or pinch him in the butt or whatever he could get a hold of. So every kid knew slats. And slats hung out quite a bit at the Sinclair station. And so he'd go do his chores in the morning and come back to town and spend time. Do his chores in the evening. Rather conservative man, but everybody knew him, everybody liked him. And I like to mention slats and my dad, Chet, going hunting. They went crow hunting in Mishawaka. I believe where Town and Country Shopping Center is now was a city dump. And I can remember as a kid wanting to go along. I'm only 8 or 9 years old, so I wasn't allowed to go hunting yet. But Slats had a 35 or 36 Chevy. And in the back seat, when they go hunting, there'd be an owl, a live owl in a cage, shotgun shells, a couple of shotguns, maybe a little bit of beer, and a half case of dynamite. Dynamite had nothing to do with going crow hunting, but Slats had dynamite in his car all the time. Real good at blowing out stumps, and he any excuse to use that dynamite, he enjoyed it and he was good at it. Oh, sure, losing to high school, that was the heart of everything. Everything started and stopped at the high school. And when we lost it, we lost our identity. The kids, I think it pretty much closed in '66. They used the building a year or two after that, but nobody graduated. The basketball stars and the baseball stars that we thought were stars went to other schools, Elkhart, for example, and they weren't stars anymore. Elkhart really didn't want them. So Bristol lost its identity as such. And it slowly deteriorated even more since the high school's gone. Well, small town America, for the most part, it's gone. And I got to grow up in it.